Hello and welcome to another broadcast of the Peninsula Biz Buzz. My name is Shelley Smith. We hope that you're having a fabulous day already. Bob, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm having a fabulous day. I was out in the rain already and I got wet and then I had to come in and change clothes. But at least I get to do a Peninsula Biz Buzz today, and I get to do it with a guy who I say is kind of one of the, and I'm dating myself here, Shelley, you probably won't get this because you're much younger. When E.F. Hutton talks, people listen.
Listen.
Remember those commercials? So when Jim Spore talks, he's one of the guys in the Hampton Roads area, certainly. When Jim Spore talks, people listen. And I consider myself very fortunate in the last 2 years to get to know him and to get to learn a lot from him. So it took us a little while to get him on the program, mostly because he's busier than most people. But very happy to have you today, Jim. Jim is a former city manager of Virginia Beach for 24 years, and now he's the president and CEO of ReInvent Hampton Roads. And Jim, right off the bat, tell us about ReInvent Hampton Roads, what it means, why it was created, how is it funded, all those types of questions.
Well, good morning, Bob and Shelley. It's good to see you both. ReInvent really came about over a long period of time. The really started after the region began to think about why weren't we recovering economically like many of the other areas in the country were. And so this was long about 2014. We're like, we're not seemingly coming out of the Great Recession like many of the other areas are. And so actually the Hampton Roads Community Foundation launched a really in-depth dive into what makes this economy tick. And we had a bunch of volunteers, and I was a volunteer at that time with the project, and we really identified some reasons and some concerns and some opportunities that we wanted to pursue. And so long about the end of 2015, the foundation said we need to create an organization whose job it is full-time to really stand up and take a look at how we go forward in our economy. So January 1st, 2016, reInvent was actually launched. We are a 501c3. We are funded by a number of organizations, including the foundation, the state of Virginia in terms of the State Go Virginia program, the Port Authority, the Hampton Roads Business Roundtable, and some private donations. So that's what we do. We take a look at how do we create higher paying jobs in this region.
With the idea that higher paying jobs kind of trickle down and make lower paying jobs. It doesn't work the other way, right?
That is absolutely correct. In fact, we created a job creation model around like, how do we create jobs? And there's only three ways to create jobs. You either grow the businesses you've got, you attract new businesses in the region, or you start new businesses from startups. So that innovation economy is really important. And if you do those three things reasonably well, then the fourth kind of jobs, the service jobs, will come naturally. And as you point out, higher paying jobs really create lower paying jobs. It doesn't work in reverse, unfortunately.
Okay, so based on the things you said about how do you create jobs, three ways, right? You have, who are your partners in the community? Obviously the Alliance, the chambers. How's your relationship with 757 Accelerate, 757 Angels, those types of organizations?
We actually created them, and that was some of the early work that we did through either Go Virginia or through our own research. We said, you know what, we need to really take a look at, and we studied in depth the innovation economy. We weren't creating a lot of startups. Virginia has done a fairly poor job of creating new businesses, and particularly so in this region. And partly that's due, I think, to the fact that for years we have really benefited from the military being here. We haven't really had to hustle to create jobs. They just kind of came, in freight cars full of money from DC. So we studied the whole process, and we said, you know what, we identified some gaps, and we created 757 Accelerate. We created a seed fund, 757 Seed, and really they're working very hard to try and help entrepreneurs start companies in this region.
Okay, so I'm going to get around to Go Virginia in a minute, but you mentioned the 2008 downturn, and one of the reasons that reInvent was created was because we were not recovering as quickly as some other MSAs, comparable size MSAs. One of the reasons, and then you mentioned defense funding, right? And so one of the reasons I think, and I'm sure that you agree with me, is sequestration hit like, what, 2011, 2012.
Oh, it killed us.
And that hurt us badly, right?
Yeah.
So coming out of this one, out of this COVID crisis, do you think there are things that are going to set us up to actually recover faster than some of our comparable sized MSAs?
Well, there's a bunch of people working together to try and figure that exact question out, and it's been a great collaboration between 8 business organizations to really focus on what do we do. Here we are, we're in the soup. We had just kind of created some momentum in the region. We were making some real progress over the last 3 or 4 years, and now the COVID thing hits. And so how do we get that momentum back? And that's really a really important project that the chamber, and you're involved in this heavily, and both chambers, both workforce boards, Civic Leadership Institute, for example, ReInvent, Old Dominion University is really stepping up and providing some resources to help us answer the question, how do we get that momentum back? What are the things that we can do? And we're going to go back much like we did when we created ReInvent, and we're going to set up a series of 10 committees, and we're going to take a look at the various components of this regional economy, because the fundamental unit of any economy is the region. It's not individual cities, it's not individual companies, it's the region. So we've got to have that understanding of the system, and we all need to be pulling together in the same direction, and that really is happening. And we're going to take this summer and come up with some actual specific actions that can help the economy recover and really come out with a plan long about Labor Day.
Jim, a question to follow up with that, going back to the 3 spheres that you talked about, what are some questions that existing organizations or those who have ideas and thoughts for a startup, what should they be asking themselves now that might be different than December of last year?
Well, the thing that's different about this downturn is nobody knows when it's going to end. Yeah. That's the thing that's got people pretty anxious. And so when we started this project, Bob, you remember this, we were saying, well, we need to do something in the next couple of months to get back on track. And the more we got into it, we realized this is not going to be a couple of month kind of exercise. This is going to be an effort that in all probability is going to have to extend over 2 to 3 years. So we're asking companies and we're asking organizations to really think, not only how do we restart our business, but how do we grow it in a way that we're going to come out on the other side stronger than we went in. And so that's kind of the key to it.
I know the conversations I'm having with clients, to your very point, are we went from the how do we survive mode into now coming out of the survival into that thriving mode. And where I know conversations were kind of stopped in the moment, I am beginning to see a shift of what's the rest of the year into 2021, into 2025 look like from a forecasting and what can we do. So I don't know if you and Bob, you definitely to speak in on that, if you're starting to see the conversations start to change into more of that future track.
I think that's a good observation. And I think, don't waste a good crisis. I think a lot of people are really being forced to be very creative and take a look at their business model, take a look at their productivity and efficiency and how can we do better. And I think things that we're considering now would not have been considered in February. Yeah. So that's the silver lining in the cloud of the COVID.
So I've been saying to a lot of people that a lot of long-term transformations that were going to happen over the next 5 or 10 years are now going to have to accelerate. Yeah. So eventually that'll be good for our economy. But I can tell you, Jim, it's very difficult. And I was really kind of hanging on to several coattails in the last 2 years, learning and benefiting from your expertise and watching some of the things that you and Bob Crum and Brian Stevens and people like that were doing. But it's hard to not look back with a tinge of sadness and say, boy, on March 10th, we were just charging forward and looking great. And it's something that I really have to resist and I'm sure others have to resist also. And we have to keep looking forward and working with high energy people who are positive, and we have to keep focusing on the positives. So, and I just talked too long, but can you talk about a couple of the things that are going on right now that will put us in good position to move forward rapidly?
Yeah, I think, Bob, those are all good comments. And in fact, the whole thrust of the program that I described is, and we named it Forward 757. We've got to focus on what's ahead of us. We can't lament the fact that we lost the momentum that we had, and we need to recover it. So we're really focusing on the positive. We're focusing on what's ahead. How did we get to where we were, and how do we continue on to grow the economy? How we got to where we were was we collaborated, and that's really the whole thrust between the Go Virginia program at the state level that we're administering here regionally, and what this Forward 757 is all about is to get those 8 organizations collaborating, trying to be creative and come up with ways that we can really take advantage of the enormous assets that this region has and grow them.
And luckily, before March 13th or 17th or whenever this all got serious, we were already working together on a monthly basis, and I thought that was critical. That regionalism was alive and well and moving forward. So we just had to accelerate that also, working together as friends and colleagues. So
yeah, thank God we had that relationship. I mean, you know, the scuttlebutt around the region is that we don't collaborate, we don't cooperate, and that's simply not the case. And we've developed relationships over the last few years that, had we not taken the time to do that and been working together, we would not be able to put this Forward 757 on the street. So you're right. It's a great environment to get some things done.
yes, it is. Okay, Go Virginia. You mentioned that several times. Can you talk about Go Virginia, the purpose of Go Virginia? I would say the purpose and mission of Go Virginia 6 months ago, as compared to, has it changed? Has the focus of Go Virginia changed?
It has changed. The focus and the reason for its creation back in 2016 was to get organizations, get cities, get counties to collaborate together to cause economic development in a positive way. And so when the General Assembly adopted the Go Virginia program in this 2016 session, that was really the purpose. Let's create economic growth, let's create jobs, let's require people, and let's incentivize. For the first time, the state of Virginia is actually incentivizing collaboration, and it's worked amazingly well. The region that we are in is called Region 5. The state was divided into 9 sub-regions. ReInvent Hampton Roads actually administers the Go Virginia program in this region, and we've issued 12 grants for over $14 million since the end of 2017. Statewide, we just crossed the 100 project threshold, and they've distributed like $82 million. So it's really worked. To your point about how is it working differently, in April, the middle of April, the state Go Virginia board said, wow, we've got to do something to try and jumpstart this economy. So they really pivoted the program and took about $14.7 million and held that out there and said, look, this is our recovery and resilience program. We're going to reduce the requirements for local match. What Go Virginia requires is those at least 2 cities to collaborate, and that they put skin in the game. They invest in the program. So the state change has said, look, let's take that requirement for local match and suspend that for a year and see what happens. Well, the floodgates have been opened. We have, in Region 5, we have 14 projects right now that we're trying to work with and get those to our regional council in July. So the effort is to get that money out the door, get it into the market. Let's create some momentum at the state level by really creating an effort and focus on the recovery and then resilience.
So last year, Virginia was named the #1 state for business by CNBC, I think. Mm-hmm. Is it any coincidence that Go Virginia came to be about 3 or 4 years ago, or 3 or 4 years before that? Or did that have a significant impact, do you think, on Virginia becoming the #1 state for business?
It's hard to say, but I think it certainly helped. I think these initiatives, if you look around the state and take a look at them, there's really a concentration of effort into 4 areas. One is talent pipelines. How do we develop talent in the state? That's the main thing that any business that's thinking of coming to Virginia or growing in Virginia is looking for, is qualified people. How do we create an innovation economy? How do we scale up our existing small businesses? That's where most of the job growth is. And then how about development sites? I think the EDP, when they looked around the state, they said, you know what, we're losing a lot of opportunities here because we just don't have sites that are ready, that are shovel ready to develop. So ReInvent funded a program to take a look at that. Go Virginia is continuing that effort and putting a lot of money into site development. And we're working through the planning district and the various cities to identify potential sites for investment. So I think all of those things taken together have a lot to say about why Virginia is ranked the #1 state for business.
And I hope we maintain that rating.
Yeah, you bet. Well, you know, there's lots of good things happening, a lot of good things happening on the peninsula, a lot of good things happening all over the state of Virginia. I mean, there's announcements happening all the time.
So still moving forward, Virginia and 757. Okay,
Yep.
the last thing I've got, Jim, one of those things that has great promise to help with our economic recovery in Hampton Roads is offshore wind. Can you comment just very briefly on where we stand with that and where you think we're headed?
Offshore wind was an area that we identified as a specific regional opportunity a couple of years ago, and we kind of took the leadership along with the Sierra Club and Dominion Energy to really raise the awareness of that. And I think the key here, Bob, is that just ask yourself the question, how often does a region have an opportunity to entice or to grow a major new industry in the regional economy? And the answer is like rarely, if ever. And so offshore wind, I think, does represent that opportunity. And 2 years ago, Virginia was trailing the pack. Today, we've leapfrogged some of the states in the Northeast. And if you go 27 miles off the shore of Virginia Beach, you will see ships out there actually installing the first turbine. So we have really taken, I think, the lead. The hope is that we will develop Hampton Roads as a hub for offshore wind in the entire East Coast. So that's an area that can mean thousands of additional jobs in this region. So we're excited about it. And we've funded a grant through the Alliance to create an offshore supply chain effort to try and attract those companies that make the parts and make the components for the wind turbines. So that's a huge opportunity for growth.
That's excellent news. Thanks very much, Jim. And that's actually more than I knew about it before. And because I'm not paying attention at meetings sometimes, I guess. But very good. Over to you, Shelley.
Jim, is there anything as we go into wrap that we didn't ask you or that you want to tell us in general? And then by all means, make sure that you give the website where people can find out more of what you're doing and the 8 organizations that are involved.
Okay, great. Nothing I think I would add other than let's be hopeful. And as Bob said, let's look forward as we try and grow this economy, and let's work together. That's kind of the key that's made ReInvent a success, is that we have no authority over anyone, but I think we are a trusted neutral party, and we do convene and bring people together. And fortunately, we've got some great partners in this region. So things I think are looking up, and it's it's always darkest before the dawn. So let's really be hopeful. Go Virginia is a state program. It's run by the Department of Housing and Community Development in Richmond. We're the regional administrator for that. Our website is Hampton Roads, ReInvent Hampton Roads, hr.org. And we encourage people to get involved.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for being on today.
Thank you, guys.
It's incredible positive news, which is always a good way to start a podcast, which is awesome. So thank you for tuning in today. please comment, share, and definitely reach out to Bob and I and tell us who you want to have on and what questions do you have around the 757 and in our community, because we can make a difference together. So we appreciate you. Bob, final comments to you today.
Final comments. So I was thinking the other day, as I picked up my dry cleaning for the first time, literally in 3 months, the only dry cleaner in town that must be doing well is Jim Spore's dry cleaner, because he wears collared shirts and ties and suits every single day since this began. So, so good on you, Jim. I'm gonna start wearing mine every day just so I can help keep that dry cleaner in business, because they're a wonderful couple. So, all right, that's all we got today. Thanks very much, Jim, for making time.
Thank you, guys.
Talk to you later.